Hello everybody, this is Coding Atlas, and today we are studying functions. This is how we declare a function. A function is basically what we saw before. When we write console.writeLine, writeLine here is a function. It takes parameters and it gives an output. So if you write console.writeLine hello world here is the parameter, this is the function name, and there is no return type which it gives. But if you write string a equals to console.readline, here we have no parameters inside, but the return type of this function is string. It means it returns a string and we put it in a string variable to use it later. So this is how the return type works, and the parameters is basically what we put in the braces. So let's try create a function. Let's try create a function which calculates, for example, an area of a square. For it we need to give it one parameter basically, it's the length of a side, because square has both sides same. Let's call it A. And here, instead of printing it, actually let's firstly print it, because I wanna show how it works. So let's try to call this function. We give a float in here, and let's run it. Actually, right now it returns only the variable, it doesn't do any calculations, so let's write a multiplied by a as a square. Let's see. Yeah, we have square area is 25. Now, how do we change it in a way in which we return it instead of printing it, so we can use it later for calculations? Firstly, we change void type to float. Void here means it doesn't return anything, float means it returns a float, int means it returns an int, and so on. So here it's void because main doesn't return anything. Here it's float because we return a float, and instead of printing it, you see it gives an error because we don't return anything, but we say we will. So instead of doing this, we just do return a multiplied by a. Now there is no errors, and if we call this, nothing happens. Why? Because we don't use this value. Let's create a float and then use it, print it out on the screen. And we see it working. So we created our first function right now. Other thing which might be important for us is knowing about optional parameters. Let me show you how it works. Let's create a simple function with void type and call it foo. Now let's give it some parameters. For example, string name and let's just print hello name. So let's call it and see what happens. Hello Ben. Okay, we have hello Ben. Now let's say we want to print Ben only when we want to print Ben. Like normally we don't want to print Ben, we just want to print hello. But if we give another parameter, which will be the type boolean, it will print it. So let's see what we do. Let's create a variable called bool. Let's call it print name. And now let's write if print name. Then we print this. Otherwise, we just print hello. Here now it requires one more parameter and we see it. We can try to give it and see what happens. With false we get hello. With true we get hello Ben. But now pay attention. How we make it optional. So by default, let's say it will be false, so it will just say hello. But if we give it, it will say hello and the name. Let's see how it works. We just write equal to the default value. That's as simple as this. But you need to put them, the optional parameters, always in the end of the parameter list. Because if you put it like in the start, like this, there will be an error, because the problem is, if you have optional parameters first, and you give a value, it will think that Ben stands for this. So in C# there is a thing which prevents this. If you put them not in the end, there will be an error, and the program will not run. So let's put it in the end. Now let's try print it, see how it works. Hello Ben. We don't put anything here. Hello, even as we give Ben. We put a false. We can still put a false, but it doesn't matter much because it is already false, but we can still do it. And it's still hello. That's how it works. Also, you can create multiple functions. Let's create one more function here. Let's call it foo2. And let's say it will print us goodbye. Goodbye name. Goodbye. Now let's call foo2. Oh yeah, I forgot about here's right line. Okay, let's see how it works. And it works. We see here we have true. Here we don't have anything, so we just say goodbye. We could also implement it like, instead of giving this thing, this boolean, we could just say name equals to nothing, and if name is not equal to nothing, we print it, otherwise we print hello. Let's do the same here. This is empty string. If name is not equal to an empty string, we print goodbye name, otherwise we print goodbye. Here we don't have any true. Here in both cases we'll have hello Ben, goodbye Ben. But if we remove this, which we can't do because it's optional here, we see only goodbye. That's how simple it is. That was all for the functions. Functions are quite simple, but they're very important because their point is simplifying the program. You have like multiple parts of the program, which may repeat in your program. And repeating code is usually a bad practice. So what we do here, we put the code in a function, and then we just call the function when we want to repeat the code. And it is much smaller code, and it's much more readable. So using functions is a very good practice. And we'll be using functions from now on in our tutorial. Now that was all for today. So thank you everybody for watching this lesson. I hope you understood it. That's all for today. Goodbye.